You probably think your paycheck is like a direct reflection of your hustle.
Oh, absolutely. That is the meritocracy myth we all love to buy into.
Yeah, I mean, you think it's about your street smarts, or maybe the late nights you put in at the office.
Or the connections your family gave you. We all think we are the architects of our own success.
Exactly. You polish your resume, you practice your interview answers in the mirror, and you negotiate your salary, thinking your skills are what determine your worth.
But, what if the ultimate ceiling on your lifetime wealth was actually already decided?
Right. What if your economic destiny was just locked in by a biological measurement you rarely even think about?
A measurement completely out of your control. I mean, it is finalized before you even realize it is happening.
And yet it quietly and ruthlessly sorts you into an economic tier.
Yeah, we tell ourselves we live in a pure meritocracy, but the data we are looking at today just violently rejects that comforting illusion.
So that is the mission of our deep dive today. We are going to explore a hidden physical metric that secretly dictates salary tiers.
And we are not using vague psychological theories here.
No, not at all. We are diving into a stack of incredibly rare, highly revealing, and frankly, face-slapping labor market data.
Data that strips away all the noise and looks at the bare biological chassis of human success.
So what are we looking at today? What is the source here?
So the singular source guiding our journey today is a landmark working paper by Tom Vogl. He is an economist from Princeton University.
Okay, Princeton. Heavy hitter.
Definitely. And this research was published by the National Bureau of Economic Research. It tracks the real-life trajectories of thousands of Mexican men.
Specifically those aged 25 to 65, right?
Right. And the foundation of this research is something called the Mexican Family Life Survey, or MXFLS.
Which is crucial because this survey is not just, a sterile spreadsheet of tax brackets.
Not at all. It is a highly detailed, deeply personal tracking of human lives. It tracks physical bodies and cognitive realities over time.
Okay, we need to reveal this hidden metric right now, because I know people are wondering what we're talking about.
Let's do it.
We are talking about human height. Your physical height is basically an invisible VIP ticket to a higher social class.
It acts as a physical stamp, like a biological receipt of your past, which dictates your financial future.
And I know exactly what you were thinking listening to this. In the US or the UK or Canada, being tall might help you get a few more matches on dating apps.
Yeah, or maybe it gets you picked first for a pickup basketball game.
Right. And psychologists always talk about how tall guys are more likely to become CEOs because they look, authoritative.
Sure, the whole visual dominance thing.
But we are talking about a totally different phenomenon here. In wealthy nations, height barely nudges your actual bank account.
But in developing nations, it completely rewrites your financial destiny from the ground up.
The contrast between those two worlds is just staggering.
It really is. So in high-income, wealthy nations, the data does show a very slight wage bump for taller people.
How slight are we talking?
Well, every extra centimeter of height adds a tiny 0.8% to your wages.
Okay, so it exists, but it is a subtle, almost negligible advantage in the grand scheme of a career.
Exactly. It's basically statistical noise. It is pocket change.
But step into the labor market of Mexico, and that number just explodes.
It does. The wage bump jumps to 2.3% per centimeter.
2.3% for every single centimeter.
Yeah.
Think about the physical reality of a centimeter for a second. It is less than half an inch. It is like the width of a fingernail.
It's tiny.
And every single time you add that tiny sliver of bone length, your lifetime earning potential jumps by over 2%. That is wild.
Let's actually do the math on a totally normal physical difference just to see how this plays out in reality.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a mere 10-centimeter difference in height between two men. That is roughly 4 inches.
4 inches is nothing. I mean, that is the difference between a guy who is 5'7" and a guy who is 5'11".
All right, you see that exact variation between two brothers sitting at the same dinner table?
Yeah, it's super common.
Well, that simple 4-inch difference translates to a massive 23% gap in hourly wages.
23%. I mean, imagine sitting next to a coworker. You have the exact same title.
You do the exact same
You clock in at the exact same time. But he makes 23% more money than you, simply because the top of his head is a little further away from the soles of his shoes.
It is a completely absurd reality, and the shape of the data is what makes this so undeniable.
What do you mean by the shape of the data?
Well, when you graph height against income in this survey, you see a relentless upward climb. It is a monotonic line.
Meaning it just keeps going up.
Exactly. There are no dips, There are no weird plateaus where the advantage tapers off. It is a perfectly straight upward trajectory.
So the taller you are, the more you make, period.
Period. It does not matter if you are short moving up to average or average moving up to tall. The wage bump is constant.
A well flatter is basically perfectly vertical, and it tracks perfectly with the length of the skeleton.
It really does.
Okay, I have to push back on this premise before we go any further, because there is a very obvious common sense explanation for this.
Let's hear it.
In a developing economy, a huge portion of the workforce is doing manual labor. Doesn't being taller just mean you have a larger physical frame.
You mean you are literally carrying more muscle mass?
Yeah, you have a longer lever arm to swing a hammer. You can lift heavier bags of fertilizer in the field. You can lay more bricks in an hour.
Right.
It just seems entirely logical that a bigger machine produces more output and therefore gets paid more money.
Well, you have just articulated what classic economic theory claimed for decades.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was known as the brawn theory. And for a very long time, the most brilliant economists in the world accepted it as absolute gospel.
Because it makes sense.
They looked at developing countries, they saw agrarian economies heavily reliant on agriculture and manual construction, and they concluded that height was simply a proxy for physical strength.
So strength equated to higher productivity, and productivity equaled money. Case closed.
Exactly. It does make intuitive sense if we were still living in the 18th century.
Right. But we aren't.
No, we are living in the modern era. Even in developing nations like Mexico, technology has completely infiltrated the labor market.
We have tractors, we have forklifts.
We have automated assembly lines and hydraulic lifts.
So the idea that a modern economy is doling out a massive 23% wage premium simply because someone has a slightly stronger back is a myth.
It is a total myth, and that muscle myth is about to be completely destroyed by this data.
Okay, well, we assume physical labor demands physical giants. But in a world where a push-button machine does the lifting of 100 men, are we really paying that kind of premium just for raw brawn?
Not a chance. And this specific tension, muscle versus mind, it sparked a massive academic clash.
Really? Like a full-on debate?
Oh, it became a literal war of ideas in the global economic community. Researchers were looking at the same phenomenon of height premiums across different countries and coming up with completely contradictory explanations.
So what did the battle lines actually look like?
Well, on one side, you had major studies coming out of places like Brazil and the Philippines. These economists fiercely defended the brawn theory.
Because they were looking at developing nations.
Exactly. They looked at their local data and insisted that height directly equated to physical endurance and muscular strength, which commanded a premium in their heavy labor economies.
So they were the champions of the muscle argument.
Yes. But on the opposing side, you had comprehensive studies from the United States and Sweden.
Ah, wealthy nations.
Right. These researchers argued for the brain theory. They presented data showing that physical height was highly correlated with cognitive ability.
So they argued that the labor market wasn't rewarding the length of the bones, but rather the processing power of the brain that happened to reside in that taller body.
Exactly.
But, I mean, how do you settle a fight like that? You have two completely different camps looking at completely different countries.
It's tricky.
The muscle guys are looking at developing nations, and the brain guys are looking at wealthy, post-industrial nations. It seemed like an impossible debate to resolve because they aren't even comparing the same types of economies.
You are totally right. To break that deadlock, you need a tiebreaker. You need a data set that has never existed before in the history of economic research.
Which is where our survey comes in.
Exactly. You need a way to measure the raw brain power of adults in a developing economy, where the brawn theory is supposedly dominant. And that is the secret weapon of the Mexican Family Life Survey.
It is the very first survey in a developing country to directly test the brains of working-age adults.
Yes.
And I really want to emphasize how wild that is. They didn't just ask people how many years they went to school. They actually went out and tested the raw cognitive processing power of grown men in the workforce.
Which is unprecedented. I mean, testing children's cognition is common in research. We have test scores from schools all over the world. But testing grown men out in the real-world workforce across an entire nation, that was just totally unheard of.
And the researchers knew they couldn't just rely on school grades to measure intelligence, right?
No, absolutely not.
Why not? Doesn't a diploma prove you are smart?
Not in a developing economy with extreme inequality. School grades and graduation rates are heavily biased by wealth.
Oh, of course.
Think about it. A brilliant child from a desperately poor rural village might have to drop out at age 10 to work in the fields.
Yeah, just to survive.
Whereas a remarkably average child from a wealthy urban family might be tutored and pushed all the way through a university degree.
So if you only look at education, you're really just measuring the size of the parent's wallet, not the raw computational power of the worker's brain.
Exactly. They needed a pure metric.
But how on earth do you test the raw brain power of thousands of adults across a diverse country?
It's a huge logistical nightmare.
I mean, you have people in high-rise office buildings, but you also have people in remote agricultural communities who might not even be able to read or write fluently. You can't just hand them a standardized math test.
You really can't. So they bypassed language and formal education entirely. They used something called the Raven's progressive matrices.
The Raven's matrices.
Yeah.
This is such an elegant solution.
It really is.
Because it is not a trivia test to see if you know the capital of France. It is not about solving algebra equations.
No, it is a pure, unadulterated test of abstract reasoning.
How does it work?
It consists of 12 visual puzzle questions. The subject looks at a complex geometric pattern that has one piece missing.
Okay.
Below it, there are several options. The subject has to deduce the underlying logic of the pattern and select the piece that perfectly completes it.
So it requires 0 language skills.
0. It requires 0 historical knowledge. You don't even need to know how to read to ace it.
It just purely measures your brain's ability to identify patterns, solve novel problems, and apply abstract logic.
Precise.
I just have to marvel at the logistics of this for a second.
It's wild to think about.
Imagine these researchers. They are traveling to remote farms. They are walking onto factory floors. They are navigating dense urban neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And they are pulling thousands of grown men aside, sitting them down, and handing them a booklet of 12 visual puzzle questions, all to quantify the abstract logic of an entire nation's labor force. It is a staggering undertaking.
It is. And the results they got from those 12 visual puzzles were explosive.
Explosive how?
They completely shattered the brawn theory and revealed the hidden package deal of human height.
The package deal, let's talk about that. Because being 10 centimeters taller doesn't just mean you get more money. It means you are carrying a biological VIP package.
Remember that 10-centimeter difference we talked about earlier, the 4 inches?
Yeah.
Well, the researchers found that those 4 inches come with an extra full year of formal education.
A full year. I mean, in a developing economy, an extra year of school is a massive advantage. It can literally be the difference between basic literacy and advanced technical skills.
Absolutely. Furthermore, those 4 inches correlate to a 0.4 standard deviation increase in cognitive test scores on the Raven's matrices.
Okay, let me put that 0.4 standard deviation into human terms for a second.
Please do.
If you took a massive room full of completely average people, a jump of 0.4 standard deviations moves you from the dead center of the pack straight into the top third of the smartest people in the room.
It's a huge leap.
It is a highly significant, demonstrably sharper level of abstract reasoning.
And the package deal continues. Along with the education and the brain power, the taller workers reported vastly better physical health.
Really?
Yeah, they suffered from fewer illnesses, they experienced less chronic pain, they had fewer days where they were too sick to work.
So height isn't just about the length of your femur or your shin bones. It is a biological mirror.
That's a great way to put it.
It is reflecting your brain power, your immune system, your educational attainment. All of it. It is a visible marker of an entirely invisible reality.
But the most disruptive finding in Tom Vogel's paper wasn't just that tall people are smarter and make more money.
Oh, what was the real shocker?
The true shock came when they looked at exactly who is benefiting the most from this biological premium.
Okay, yes. This is the part that completely inverted my understanding of how the world works. Because the answer to who benefits most is totally backwards from what you would assume.
Right. If you follow conventional logic, you would assume height matters most in elite, highly competitive environments.
Like you picture the cutthroat corporate boardrooms in major cities.
Exactly. You imagine executives in tailored suits using their physical presence to dominate a negotiation table.
The classic stereotype is the tall, imposing CEO commanding the room. We assume the height premium is a luxury of the urban corporate elite.
We do. But the data violently rejects that assumption.
It does.
The poorest, most disadvantaged people in the entire data set have the highest height premium on Earth.
Okay, we have to break down these specific demographics because this is the reverse privilege paradox. It defies all common sense.
Let us start with the urban-born workers. These are people born and raised in cities where there is generally better infrastructure, hospitals, and schools.
Right.
For them, the height premium is 1.5% per centimeter.
Okay, that is still almost double the rate in the United States, but it is the lowest number in this specific Mexican data set.
Now, move out of the city, look at the rural-born workers, people born out in the country, far away from advanced medical care and stable food supply chains.
Why? What happens to their premium?
For them, the premium jumps to 2.3% per centimeter.
So the premium goes up as the environment gets poorer.
And then we look at the indigenous populations. This is the most historically marginalized, historically oppressed, and economically deprived group in the entire data set.
And what's their number?
For an indigenous worker, the height premium hits an astronomical 3.7% per centimeter.
3.7%. That means a 10-centimeter difference for an indigenous worker results in a 37% wage gap.
It's massive.
Think about the scale of that inequality. Why is the premium so massive for the people who have the least? Why does being tall matter so much more when you are poor?
The economic concept at play here is the variance of deprivation. It explains everything.
The variance of deprivation. How does that work in practice?
Okay, imagine a rich environment. Think of a wealthy suburb in an industrialized nation.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
In that environment, essentially every child has enough calories. Everyone has access to a pediatrician. Everyone drinks clean, purified water.
Yeah.
There are no parasitic infections sweeping through the neighborhood.
It is a very safe baseline.
Exactly. Because the environment is uniformly safe and nourishing, a person's final adult height is dictated almost entirely by their genetics.
Right.
If someone in that wealthy suburb is short, it is simply because their parents possess genes for being short.
They maxed out whatever biological potential their DNA gave them. The environment didn't hold them back.
Precisely. In a wealthy area, height tells you almost nothing about the person's childhood struggles because there were very few struggles to begin with.
That makes total sense.
But now, transport that logic to a deeply impoverished rural environment or a marginalized indigenous community. The environment there is incredibly volatile.
Volatile in terms of pure survival.
Yes. We are talking about severe nutritional shocks. A drought destroys the local crop, and suddenly calories are scarce for 6 months.
Wow.
We are talking about disease outbreaks. A lack of clean water leads to rampant gastrointestinal infections.
So constant stress.
Constant. In that volatile environment, reaching your genetic height potential is not a given. It is a brutal obstacle course. The body has to constantly make biological compromises.
It's like biological triage. If a child is starving or fighting off a severe infection, the body shuts down bone growth to save energy for the vital organ.
Exactly.
The body basically says, forget getting taller, we just need to keep the heart beating.
Exactly the mechanism. So, if you encounter a tall adult who grew up in that volatile, impoverished environment, their height proves something profound.
What does it prove?
It proves they survived the obstacle course.
It is a biological receipt of survival, a physical trophy demonstrating that they somehow overcame the deprivation that stunted everyone else around them.
You didn't get the parasite that stunted your neighbor's growth. You didn't suffer the extreme malnutrition that shrank your cousin's bones.
Right.
Your family either had slightly more resources, better access to clean water, or you possessed an incredibly robust immune system.
And here is the crucial connection to the brain, right?
Yeah.
That survival doesn't just build bones.
Right.
If you escaped the parasites and the starvation, your developing brain was spared from the damage as well.
That is the key. So the height difference in a poor village is a massive, visible signal of cognitive and physical sparing.
The taller guy is literally walking around with a brain that didn't get damaged by childhood disease.
That is why the premium is 3.7% for indigenous workers. In a population where severe stunting is common, being tall is the ultimate proof that your brain and body receive the necessary fuel to fully develop.
You possess an overwhelming cognitive and physical advantage over your peers who suffered the brunt of the deprivation.
It's sad, but it's true in the data.
Wait, I have to challenge this logic.
Go for it.
Because if the entire 23% wage gap is just a byproduct of childhood adversity, like if it is all just about who got sick and who didn't, then we should be able to make the height advantage disappear.
How so?
If we strip away the background noise, if we mathematically remove the unequal access to food and medicine, do two men of different heights make the same amount of money?
Well, the researchers actually anticipated that exact question.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they decided to put their own theory to the test by running the most ruthless statistical filter possible over the data. They used regression analysis to isolate height from every other conceivable variable.
They actively tried to break their own finding. I love when scientists do this. But how do you mathematically strip away a bad childhood?
What if I told you your adult salary was actually determined by whether your house had a flushing toilet when you were 12 years old?
Wait, what? That sounds totally absurd.
I know.
If I walked into my boss's office and demanded a raise based on my childhood plumbing, I'd be fired.
Right, but in the context of a developing nation's labor market, it actually makes a twisted kind of sense.
Okay, explain this to me.
The researchers controlled for every childhood factor they could measure. They factored in the father's first job to account for family wealth.
Okay, makes sense.
They factored in both parents' education levels to account for intellectual support at home.
Sure.
And crucially, they isolated access to piped water and sanitation at age 12.
A flushing toilet at age 12. Why is that specific metric the magic key to this data?
Because sanitation dictates the disease load in a child's environment.
Oh, the parasites again.
Exactly. If you do not have piped water and a flushing toilet, you are chronically exposed to fecal pathogens and parasites. And parasites are metabolic thieves.
Wow, metabolic thieves.
They steal the calories and nutrients your body desperately needs to grow bone tissue and construct neural pathways. So a toilet is not just a modern convenience, it is a vital proxy for caloric security and immunological safety.
So they feed all this granular data into this statistical machine. They hold the father's job constant. They hold the mother's education constant. They hold the childhood toilet constant.
Everything is held equal.
They are essentially comparing two hypothetical men who grew up on the exact same street with the exact same parental background and the exact same plumbing.
Exactly.
What happens to the massive 23% height premium?
The premium takes a massive hit. It drops from 2.3% per centimeter all the way down to 1.4% per centimeter.
Okay, so the plumbing was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. A huge portion of the wage gap really was just the result of a safer, cleaner childhood environment.
It was, but this is the face-slapping moment of the entire study.
What is that?
The premium dropped, but it still remained statistically solid. It did not go to zero.
Not even close to zero.
What?
Even at 1.4% per centimeter, that is still almost double the height premium in the United States.
Yep.
So even when you compare two men with identical childhoods, identical access to food, identical plumbing, the taller one still walks away with significantly more money.
And this specific finding sparked a huge debate in the economic community. If it isn't the plumbing and it isn't the parents, what is causing the remaining gap?
Yeah, what is it?
This brings us to the measurement error versus reinforcement debate.
How did they try to solve the rest of the mystery?
They turned back to the brain. They added the Raven's progressive matrices cognitive test scores to the statistical model.
Ah, the visual puzzles.
The assumption was, okay, the plumbing explains some of it. Let's see if the raw intelligence test explains the rest.
So they threw the 12 visual puzzles into the math. What happened?
When they added the test scores to the model, the height premium only dropped by a measly 13%.
Only 13%. So the raw cognitive test barely explained any of the remaining height advantage.
Exactly. And researchers have two competing theories for why the intelligence test failed to explain the gap.
What's theory one?
Theory one is measurement error.
Meaning the test is flawed.
Basically.
Yeah.
A 12-question visual puzzle test is incredibly elegant, but it is still fundamentally clumsy. It is far too blunt of an instrument to capture the true, nuanced genius of human intelligence.
I mean, that's fair.
It tests abstract logic, but it doesn't test verbal dexterity, emotional intelligence, leadership charisma, or complex problem-solving over time.
So the theory is that the test simply undercounts the real cognitive gap between the tall workers and the short workers.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. You cannot define the totality of a human brain with 12 pictures of missing shapes. It is a good proxy, but it misses a lot of raw capability. What is theory two?
Theory two flips the causality entirely. It is called the reinforcement theory.
Okay, how does that work?
Maybe the test actually overestimates the biological brain gap. Consider this. If you are tall and your height somehow gets you a high-paying, complex job, that job acts as a gym for your brain.
Oh, wow.
Sitting in an office, analyzing data, and doing abstract reasoning all day actually trains your neural pathways. After 10 years of that job, you are naturally going to perform better on a visual logic puzzle than someone who's been swinging a hammer all day.
The job reinforced the brain.
Yeah.
They didn't get the job because they were smarter. They got smarter because they had the job.
Yes. It is the ultimate chicken and egg problem.
It is a massive tangled web of causality. But the bottom line is unavoidable, right?
Right.
The childhood plumbing explains some of the premium, the basic cognitive test explains a little bit more, but the massive wage gap is still sitting right there in the data, unexplained.
A huge portion of the wealth discrepancy is unaccounted for by background or basic logic skills.
So how exactly are these tall guys getting the extra cash? We have stripped away the muscles, we have factored out the plumbing, we have measured the brain. What is the physical mechanism of them getting paid?
It's baffling, right?
Do their bosses just hand them bigger checks for being tall? Does a guy walk onto a construction site, the foreman measures him with a tape measure and says, "Ah, you are 4 inches taller than the other guy. Here is your 23% raise."
That is absolutely not how labor markets operate. Employers do not pay a premium for height in a vacuum.
Then what is the mechanism? How does the height turn into money?
This is the ultimate plot twist of the entire deep dive. Taller people do not get paid more for doing the same job.
Wait, what?
They do not get paid more for doing the exact same work. A tall ditch digger does not make 23% more than a short ditch digger. A tall clerk does not make 23% more than a short clerk.
Then where does the money come from?
They get paid more because their height acts as a master key, an escape hatch. It allows them to escape backbreaking labor entirely and migrate to a completely different sector of the economy.
You're saying it is an occupational sorting mechanism.
Yes. When the researchers factored 2 specific variables into their models, education years and job type, the financial premium of height was instantly chopped in half.
Just by looking at what job title they held, half the mystery was solved.
To understand why, you have to understand the brutal reality of the Mexican labor market represented in this data set. It is a harsh landscape.
How so?
Fully 90% of the workers are trapped in high-strength, low-intelligence occupations.
The bronze sector. 9 out of 10 workers.
90% of the workforce is breaking their backs. Lifting, digging, carrying, sweating. It is a massive bottleneck. Only 10% of the workforce makes it into the brain sector.
And what are those jobs?
These are the jobs that require abstract thought, long-term planning, and carry very low physical strain.
A 90 to 10 split. The competition to get out of the bronze sector and into the brain sector must be incredibly fierce.
It is fierce, but to figure out exactly how physical height interacted with this bottleneck, the researchers had to pull off an incredibly creative academic crossover.
What did they do?
Well, the Mexican data had job classifications, but it didn't precisely measure how much muscle or mind a job actually required. It just provided basic job titles.
It just said agricultural worker or office manager. But how do you quantify that? How do you mathematically prove that a manager uses more brain power than a farmer without just relying on stereotypes?
Right.
Mexican job classifications in the 2000s weren't exactly tracking the literal calories burned or the specific cognitive load of every task.
Which is exactly why they had to look beyond their own borders. They took the Mexican job classifications and systematically cross-referenced them with a massive database from the United States.
Oh, that's clever.
They used the DOT, the Dictionary of Occupational Titles.
The DOT. For anyone who doesn't know, this is a legendary database maintained by the U.S. government. It quantifies, with terrifying precision, exactly how much lifting, sitting, reaching, and thinking every single job in the economy requires.
Down to the smallest detail.
It breaks human labor down into decimals of physical and mental exertion.
So the researchers mapped the Mexican jobs onto the U.S. database. This allowed them to precisely measure the muscle versus mind requirements of every single gig in the Mexican economy.
Wow.
They had a perfect map of the labor market down to the exact fraction of physical exertion and cognitive aptitude required for each role.
They built a high-definition map of human labor. And what did the map show when they overlaid the height data onto it?
It showed a biological migration. It perfectly illustrated an economic concept known as Roy's self-selection model.
Roy's self-selection model.
But we don't need to get bogged down in the academic jargon. Conceptually, think of it as a great desperate flight.
A flight away from what?
Away from physical destruction. As height increases in the data, inch by inch, centimeter by centimeter, the workers systematically flee from jobs requiring heavy lifting.
Oh my God.
They abandon the bronze sector and flood into jobs requiring intense, abstract thinking.
They are escaping the manual labor trap.
The taller a worker is, the statistically less likely they are to be digging a ditch or carrying bricks, and the statistically more likely they are to be sitting at a desk analyzing data. Height is the master key that unlocks the door to the 10% brains sector.
This completely changes the paradigm. Yeah. It is not that a tall farmer makes more money than a short farmer because he can reach higher apples.
Exactly.
It is that the tall guy didn't become a farmer at all. He looked at the farm, realized he had the cognitive capacity to do something else, and became an accountant. He became a regional manager. He escaped the field entirely.
Right.
The wage premium isn't a bonus for being tall. It is the reward for migrating to a completely different, higher-paying industry.
You have hit the nail on the head. But this raises the final, ultimate question.
Would it?
Why does being tall give you the golden ticket to leave the farm? Is it just base discrimination?
Right, like, do the hiring managers for office jobs just psychologically prefer tall people, so they hand them the desk jobs?
That would be the traditional psychological explanation. Humans are shallow, we like tall people, so we put them in offices.
But the data disproves that.
Completely. Because there is one silver bullet hidden in the numbers. One specific measurable variable that completely neutralizes this entire biological lottery.
The silver bullet that destroys the height premium? What is it?
Education.
Education.
When the researchers explicitly controlled for education in their statistical models, the impact of physical height on what job a person acquired plummeted to near zero.
Near zero. It vanished.
Every single ounce of occupational advantage a tall person enjoys in the Mexican labor market is funneled entirely through one simple, undeniable fact. They got more years of formal schooling.
So it isn't height discrimination by the hiring managers at all. The tall guys got more education. The extra education qualified them for the desk jobs. The desk jobs paid the 23% wage premium.
Yes.
The height is just a passenger on the education train.
That is the sequence. But notice how this just pushes the mystery one step further back. We solved the job mystery by pointing to education, but now we have a new mystery to confront.
Why do tall people get more schooling in the first place?
Exactly. Why does the guy who is 4 inches taller get an extra full year of sitting in a classroom, while the shorter guy gets pulled out of school to work?
It all comes back to the childhood environment, doesn't it?
It does. And to fully grasp the biology behind this, we have to introduce the dual engine theory. This is the mechanism that ties the bones, the brain, and the bank account together.
The dual engine. How does it work?
Think about the first 1,000 days of human life, from conception through birth up to roughly age 3. In that tiny critical window, the human body is executing an astronomical amount of biological building, and it uses the exact same raw inputs to build everything.
We are talking about the inputs we mentioned earlier. Clean water, a complete lack of parasitic infections, dense, high-quality calories.
Those premium inputs fuel 2 biological engines simultaneously. One engine is physical. It is building your shin bones. It is lengthening your femur. It is pushing your height upward toward your genetic maximum.
Bone engine.
And at the exact same moment, drawing from the exact same pool of blood and nutrients, the second engine is building your brain.
Wow.
It is forming millions of neural pathways. It is constructing the physical architecture of your cognitive capacity.
The brain engine. They're running on the same fuel line.
Now imagine what happens when a toddler in a developing rural village gets hit with severe chronic diarrhea, which is tragically common due to poor sanitation.
Right.
The fuel line is suddenly cut. The body enters starvation mode. Both engines are violently starved of resources.
The body has to prioritize.
The bones stop growing, resulting in permanent stunting. And crucially, the neural pathways stop forming with the same density.
So physical height is basically the dashboard engine light of a human being. A tall adult is just a walking billboard that says, my brain receives premium uninterrupted fuel during my toddler years.
The dashboard light is a brilliant analogy. The physical height is the dashboard light. It is highly visible, easy to measure, and impossible to hide.
Yeah.
The brain is the engine itself. It is invisible. You cannot see the density of someone's neural pathways just by looking at them. But you can look at the dashboard light. You can see the height.
So a tall kid walks into a school. Their brain is already biologically primed to learn faster, to process abstract thought better, because they had the nutritional fuel during those critical first 1,000 days.
Exactly.
Because they are biologically primed, they excel in their classes. Because they excel, their parents and teachers encourage them to stay in school longer. They get the extra year of education.
And
that education acts as the catapult that launches them into the brain sector.
If we step back and connect this to the broader societal picture, we realize this isn't just an interesting biological quirk, it is the mechanics of a brutal cycle of class lock-in.
Class lock-in, the idea that you can never escape the tier you were born into.
Think about how this propagates across generations. Wealthy parents have money. They use that money to buy high-quality food. They live in neighborhoods with flawless sanitation and modern healthcare.
They supply the premium fuel to their children.
Their children absorb that fuel. The dual engine fires up flawlessly, the kids grow tall, and they grow cognitively sharp.
They acquire the biological VIP ticket.
Those tall, cognitively sharp kids go to premium schools. They ace their classes. They systematically flee the heavy-lifting bronze sector. They easily secure the top 10% brain jobs. They accumulate wealth.
And then they have their own kids.
And they pass the exact same biological VIP ticket to their children. The cycle locks tight. The labor market isn't merely sorting people by their current adult skills. It is laundering childhood privilege into biological traits and then rewarding those biological traits with cash.
Laundering childhood privilege into biology. That is a terrifying phrase. It completely shatters the myth that we all start at the same starting line.
It really does.
The starting line isn't drawn at high school graduation or at your first job interview. The starting line is drawn in the first 3 years of life, inside the marrow of your bones and the synapses of your brain.
We celebrate the marathon runner for crossing the finish line first, praising their endurance and willpower, but we fail to realize they started the race a mile ahead of everyone else, riding a bicycle that was built by their parents' plumbing and nutritional security.
Let us trace this entire journey back, because the scope of what we just uncovered is massive.
It's a lot to take in.
We started with a seemingly random statistic, a 23% wage gap between a tall man and a short man in Mexico. We investigated the brawn theory, only to realize that modern technology has rendered muscle power economically obsolete. We looked at the Raven's cognitive tests, proving that height was actually a proxy for abstract logic. We dug into the childhood environment, realizing that a flushing toilet at age 12 could predict an adult's salary.
Yeah.
And finally, we mapped the Great Migration, watching taller, highly educated workers flee the physical destruction of the 90% bronze sector to claim the lucrative desk jobs in the brains sector.
Height isn't about reaching the top shelf in the pantry. It is the physical residue of cognitive and economic privilege. It is the visible shadow cast by an invisible advantage.
Think about the metrics we judge ourselves by today. Think about the last time you negotiated a raise. You probably brought a list of your accomplishments.
Of course.
You highlighted your late hours, your dedication, your sheer willpower. We obsess over grind culture. We tell ourselves we earned every single penny through our own autonomous choices.
But we are completely blind to the silent biological head starts hiding in plain sight.
Imagine if human resources was secretly running a regression model on the zip code you lived in when you were a toddler, and adjusting your salary based on the nutritional density of your childhood diet.
It sounds dystopian, but structurally that is exactly what the labor market is doing.
We are swimming in a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky. It is hidden in our bones, determined before we even know how to speak.
So what does this all mean for us moving forward? We have unpacked the Mexican labor market. We have seen how biology dictates destiny in an economy violently split between physical labor and abstract thought. But what happens next?
Yeah, where does this leave us today?
This leads to a chilling final thought. We have spent this entire deep dive looking at how historical labor markets split people into brains and brawn, with physical height acting as the visible proxy for that sorting.
The people with the cognitive privilege escaped the physical labor.
The great migration to the desk job. But look at the modern world. Look at the technological revolution happening right now. As artificial intelligence begins to systematically automate the brain sector, as algorithms take over abstract reasoning, coding, data analysis, and middle management, what happens to that 10% safe haven?
Oh, wow. If AI replaces the jobs that require abstract logic, the very jobs the tall workers fled to.
What becomes the new invisible separator? Are we about to experience a completely new digital divide, an era where an entirely new, unseen childhood metric dictates whether you control the AI or the AI controls you?
That is a terrifying question.
The biological sorting mechanism hasn't stopped. The cycle of privilege laundering hasn't ended. It is just upgrading its operating system for the 21st century.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Question your assumptions. Look a little closer at the invisible metrics around you, and we will see you next time.